everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Reinforce the Horse. Today we are here with Shalyce Cluff, who grew up riding horses in the mountains of Arizona, beginning with a Welsh pony she fell in love with who died when she was 8 years old. Adolescence and young adulthood took her away from horses as she pursued a degree in human development, got married, and had 6 children who she dedicated her early adulthood to. With 3 babies under 4 years of age, she earned her master's degree in educational psychology. Always in the back of her mind, she had the desire to open an equine therapy facility, but instead began teaching online psychology and human development classes so she could stay home with her kids, who she also homeschooled. 3 months after her 6th child was born, she adopted a Mustang. Life then taught her how little she knew about horses and about our minds and behaviors. Her Mustang, Silveny, and a later Mustang named Freedom became her lifeline through some incredibly difficult experiences and the best teachers of her life. She continues to work teaching psychology classes online, supporting her kids who are now all in public school, and sharing the lessons she's learned from her Mustangs on social media. She is still working toward using horses to help humans, though it seems it may be unfolding differently than she envisioned it. Welcome, Shalyce. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. I'm super excited about this.
Yeah, welcome. We're really happy to have you. It's great.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I can't really remember where we connected. I think it might have been, like you said, through Warwick Schiller.
Yeah, so I think I was actually just looking at Facebook messages. About in 2022, I guess, I started a website and I was really working on like sharing stories of how Mustangs have helped people heal. And I think you saw one of those stories and maybe shared it. And I messaged you from there and saw we had Warwick that we both followed.
Were you the one that mentioned to me to listen to Journey On?
I don't know.
I don't know who. I need to go back and your name sounds familiar in that way.
Yeah.
I had a really profound experience with my horse where he like laid down and we both cried. Like he cried for a while and then we both fell asleep.
Really?
And I woke up, I think probably like an hour and a half later, and he woke up and,
oh, wow.
and got up and shook. And I posted about that and somebody replied back and said, have you listened to Journey On? And like my life hasn't been the same since. So that's kind of cool.
Oh, yeah. No, I don't think that was me, but wow, that does sound like an amazing experience, a huge release
that's
there.
Actually a good segue, I think, into the work that you do and your like educational background. So fill us in a little bit more on, where things began with you and horses and where that ultimately led you professionally and otherwise.
Yeah, so like I said in the bio, I grew up with horses. My mom just fell in love with horses. She got her first horse when she was like 16. And then, so we grew up with kind of that horse's babies and things. And then the first horse I really rode was that Welsh pony that died when I was 8 years old. And that was just like the worst loss of my life to that point in my life. And just so sad to lose that. But then after that, my sister got a horse. My parents kind of had a deal. When you turn 16, you can get a car or get a horse. And most of my siblings chose a car, but this one sister chose a horse, but then kind of got involved. And, life gets really busy in adolescence and often kind of takes you in different directions. So that horse was just not being used. So I kind of picked her up as my own. That horse's name was Sahari, and she was a little quarter horse Arabian. And I spent a lot of time training her and going on trail rides. And I think it was probably with her where I really just started to feel how amazing horses was. It was different being out on the trail with my horse than like living everyday life. Just felt something different and something I correlated a lot with because my mom is really into horses. It was kind of a place where we bonded or had a connection. And I think that's actually impacted a lot of my choices down the line, is just being able to, I think, feel that closeness to my mom, but also just like nature and just a peace and, something bigger than us when I was out there as a teen. But then I kind of did the same thing my sister did and forgot about horses. I got involved in sports and then went off to college and got my degree in human development and moved back home after that and started working in the mental health field. So my first job was with individuals who have serious mental illness. So these are the people, when you think of mental illness or, schizophrenia, just really, really sick, really struggling, kind of the people just trying to stay alive each day. And a lot of times that's what we were doing, is just trying to keep these people alive and keep them safe. And so I worked in that. And during that time, I met my husband. And so that, again, kind of took me away from horses. He wasn't really into horses, although it's interesting. The first thing we ever did together was going up and cleaning my mom's horse corral pen. So I always tell him, like, you knew what you were getting into now that I have more horses than maybe I need. And so it wasn't until we went off and he finished his school. And so after he finished school, we finally, bought a house and had some land where we could get a horse. And always in the back of my mind, we moved to Pueblo West, which is a pretty big equine community. So all the lots are like an acre and they have trails behind them. And so when we moved there, when we were looking for houses, I was really drawn to that just because it opened up the possibility to have horses for me again. And the first horse that we got after that was he was an old horse that was listed for free on a homeschooling website. And we went and looked at him, and he was not a very pretty horse. He had scars all over his face. And I rode him real quick, and he wasn't super responsive, but, the lady just said he was calm. He was great with kids. And so I was like, okay, I'm just going to do it. And we had like a small little setup. We kind of had more we needed to do to get a shelter and stuff, but I just jumped back in there, and he was good. The kids would have fun riding him, and they just ride him around the corral. We have pictures of him with chickens and the kids. But then he had a few instances where he bucked, and he ended up bucking one of my little girls off. And I was also pregnant with my last baby. So I was like, this isn't a good idea. So we found a great home for him. He went to a home with someone who was just looking for a calm older horse, which he really was pretty good. Just, maybe had some kinks. Looking back now, I think I would totally see him in a different light. Just everything I've learned having my horses since then. But so he found a home, and it was great. The lady that we adopted him to would send us pictures, so it was nice to know that he was being taken care of. So I had my sixth baby, and 3 months later, I'm scrolling on my phone or something, and I come across a picture of my Mustang at the Wild Horse Inmate Program in Canon City. And I didn't really know much about Mustangs. Like, I grew up with horses, but my mom really loved Arabians. And so I don't know if I even at that point knew like what a Mustang actually was, that there are these wild horses that are rounded up and adopted out. But I saw this picture and I just fell in love with her. And like I say, I had no clue. I showed the picture to my husband. He's like, oh, she's pretty, go look at her. It was just like half an hour from our house. And so I kind of started researching it and researching the process and the adoption requirements. And it all looked like stuff that we could do. But in the back of my mind, I was kind of thinking this is probably not a good idea. Like, I have 6 young kids. I just had a baby. Like, I don't know if I should be adopting an untrained horse. I just got rid of an old horse just because, he bucked once. but my husband was like, my mom trained her horses. So he was like, your mom trained horses. You can do it too. And I'm thinking, I don't really know, but like, I just loved her. Like, I still just remember seeing that picture and just seeing her eyes. So I went to the BLM office and turned in my adoption paperwork. And as I'm going to do this, I have, 6 little kids behind me. And I'm thinking, they're probably going to tell me, like, yeah, we don't really adopt out to the situations, thinking they'd probably deter me from it. But, I don't know when you guys adopted your Mustang, but pretty much they only care that you have the required facilities, which I had. So they're like, yeah, come on. And then the adoption event was like the next weekend. So I actually put a deposit on my Mustang just in case, still kind of thinking I probably won't do this. Like, it seems kind of crazy to be getting an untrained horse, having all these young kids. I don't really know what I'm doing, but I went for it. And so at the Canon City facility, you have to go into the prison to see the horses. So you have to get a background check. And when you go, you like leave your car there and get on a bus with everybody else. And, I have this brand new baby who is never away from me. But my husband drove up there with me, and they were just going to kind of wait in the car because they couldn't go in to see the horse. And so we drove back and saw her, and so I saw her, and immediately you go on this bus, and then they kind of ask you, like, do you want to go see, what kind of horse do you want? Do you want a 2-year-old? Do you want an older one? Do you want to look at the foals and mares? Or there were the trained horses. And someone had actually said that they were interested in her, so they'd been training her with the Wild Horse and Inmate program. So at that point, she was considered halter trained. So I went to see her with the trained horses. And of course, as soon as I went in there, I spotted her. And she was just a little thing now. Like, she's grown a lot. She was 3 years old then, but she was just little compared to the other horses. And they kind of do a demonstration with all the Mustangs and what the inmates have done to train them. And they walked her around a little bit, and usually they can go in a trailer and stuff. She didn't want to go in the trailer, but at that point, I was just undeterred, like, oh, that's fine. I grew up with Arabians. I don't care if they're a little flighty or whatever. I had no idea what I was getting into, or, but still I was thinking, I don't know if I should do this. So I was getting anxious to get back to the family, make sure the baby's okay. My husband doesn't love newborns, so it always would make me a little nervous leaving the babies with him. He really likes it when they're older and, can play and stuff, and not when they're crying and he doesn't know what to do. So I was anxious to get back. So I kind of saw her, I told.
Wait.
Yeah.
I gotta pause you on that. Just so you have a large family, and I could totally empathize with your husband. It's like I have 2 kids of my own, and the baby thing has never resonated with me, but I could totally do like.
Yeah, I mean, he's a great dad, but we just found out, and I love the newborn, so I'm like, it was just better for us. Like, he would hold them for a minute or, an hour, but for the rest of the time, I just, I take care of things, and it worked out good for us. But so I was like super nervous that, hopefully he's not going nuts. The baby's not crying. He's not, not knowing what to do or whatever. So I definitely left sooner than I wanted to.
Yeah, so you had a lot going on. Yeah.
But let's see. So I kind of told him, like, can I think about it? And basically I wanted someone to tell me, like, either yes, do it, or no, you're totally crazy. Why are you even thinking about doing this?
You were looking for a sign from the cosmos.
Something,
to say, like,
yes something
no.
to like
got it.
Make me think this wasn't just a bad decision. So they said, yeah, you can think about it. And while I was kind of talking to her, there was another lady there, and she was older, and a lot of the people that go in on the bus had like adopted Mustangs. So as we were driving in, I kind of got to hear their stories, and that was kind of helping me to feel better about it. At the same time, we had another friend that my husband had like mentioned to that I was looking at a Mustang, and she had horses, and she grew up with horses, and she was like, don't do it. They're dangerous. They're terrible horses, just don't do it. And so that, of course, was in the back of my mind. But hearing everybody else's stories with their Mustangs kind of encouraged me, made me think that maybe it was possible. Maybe this would end up being a good thing. But so as I was standing there kind of waiting, they have to come and bring a bus to take you back out of the prison. You can't go anywhere on your own. And you don't have phones or anything, so you can't call. Like, I couldn't call and check on my husband, see how he was doing. So I was waiting for them to kind of pick me up, and this lady was like, oh, are you looking at that Grula out there? And, I said, yeah. And she's like, oh, she looks great. She has great conformation. So that was kind of, a little boost and encouragement. So they took me out of the prison. Like, I left, had to check back in the family, and I was going to kind of think about it. And probably part of the reason my husband was on board with going up there is because Canon City has one of his favorite burger places. So after we went and looked at the horses, we went and got burgers at his place. And so we're sitting there eating the burgers, and I'm kind of thinking about it and trying to decide and weighing the pros and cons and wondering if I can really do this. And the BLM called me, and they're like, someone else is here. They're interested in her. Like, our primary purpose is for these horses to be adopted out. Like, you need to make a decision. So I kind of look at my husband and just say, okay, I'll take her. And it was funny because when I was kind of debating about it when I was back at the prison, they were like, I think she cost $325. And they're like, I know, that's a lot of money or whatever. And I was thinking, no, like, the money is not what's got me undecided. I'm just wondering, like, if me with 6 young children and, I rode horses as a teenager, so I thought I knew a lot, but I don't know really how much I know anymore. Like, it's been years since I've done a whole lot with horses. I rode maybe our old kid horse like once or twice, but he was really just like a horse for the kids. So it wasn't the money that I was worried about, it was all the responsibility that you were taking on.
So take us to that. You went through that decision. Then what started unfolding after that? Because it sounds like you kind of had an awakening of sorts as it came to working with a Mustang.
Yeah. So, she arrived, and she had been halter trained at the prison. And, so, I was ready to just like, I should be able to saddle train her. But when she arrived, like, the sweetest thing ever, I have this picture on the day she arrived where she's just like going up and meeting one of my daughters. But actually working with her was a whole different deal. I could not take her out of the corral without her exploding. And I will say, and I'm sure you guys are kind of familiar with this, that, they feed off us really well. And just being a mom, I think being a mom gave me a lot more anxiety in life in general. And, just concern about staying safe. And so I think I had a lot of anxiety about it, and I'm sure that did not help the situation. But between the two of us, like, I could not even walk her out of the corral without her just exploding. So I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I have no idea what I was not expecting this. I think a halter trained horse is just going to follow me wherever and do whatever my plans are. And she was my big teacher that made me realize, like, you're going to have to really start learning, and you're really going to have to start checking a lot of your beliefs about how this is going to work, because I'm not just going along with the flow. Like, we're going to have to find a way to work together here. And it was a long process. I'm sure if you guys follow Mustang pages, you see that lots of people have trained them in 30 days or something, or 90 days. They're riding them. And I had a lot of self-doubt, because that was not how it was going to unfold for us. And I would say it was more like a 3 or 5 year plan that that we ended up on. And it was really slow, and life got in the way a lot, you know. Um, and so, yeah, just between that, I realized like I have no idea what I'm doing. And I actually found a horse trainer that was pretty local, Justin Dunn. I don't know if you've ever heard of him, but he was,
Name sounds familiar.
yeah, he's out there in the Mustang world for sure. He does Mustang therapy with veterans, so kind of right down your alley. Um, but I had kind of seen him on Facebook probably. He had a viral video where his little like 3-year-old is leading their Mustang, and it's just an adorable video. But he was going to be at the local feed store, which is called Big R here. So I thought, I'm just going to go over there and kind of talk with him and kind of wait for someone else to tell me, like, you're crazy. You should probably just give up. You have no idea what you're doing. Like, just worry about your kids or whatever. Which would have been easier, but I don't know. The horses just kind of get inside you, and it's something I just couldn't forget. And so, despite my self-doubt and really wondering, like, is this even the best place for her? You know, should I just find her another home? I went to see him shortly after I got her, probably. And, you know, he's looking at pictures of her, and we're just talking about Mustangs, and I'm kind of debating sending her to a trainer, and he kind of just said, like, you can do this, you know, you can train your horse. And that was like really the boost that I needed to just know, like, I was capable of this. It didn't mean it was going to be easy or that there weren't going to be lots of obstacles in the road, but just having him say, like, you can train her, gave me a lot of encouragement, and also a new view from him, because, you know, I grew up with the philosophy, like, you have to show him who's boss. You can't let them get away with things, which is, you know, a really common strategy. And I was a little girl, so I'm sure it made sense that my mom was telling me, like, you have to tell him what to do, you know. But I realized with her, like, I can't force her to do things. Like, I am not large and strong enough to force this horse to do anything that she doesn't want to do. And he really had a different philosophy of just like learning to work with your horse as a partner. And so that was just a lot of things I learned from him, was just really like stuff I had never even probably considered or thought about, that there maybe was a different way to go about.
It sounds like there's more of like an uncovering of your internal self, and that actually flows through to the horse.
Yeah, for sure. And I think those are the biggest lessons I learned from my horse, were really lessons about myself and just about people, and, you know, why we behave the way we do, why we have the reactions that we have. And it was actually around this same time, and it's probably been the biggest lesson that I have learned with horses, and something that I think the universe or whoever is still trying to teach me. You know, now I have several teenagers and stuff, but it was around the same time that my husband started to have some really pretty intense struggles with his mental health. And like, I was angry about it. I was kind of like, suck it up, get over it. Like, we don't do this, you know, we just take what comes our way, we deal with it. And like, that wasn't helpful to anyone, but it was really like through working with my Mustang and through like some of the lessons from kind of building relationships that were good for both people, through like what Justin Dunn taught, that I really came to an understanding that, like, you don't have control in life. Like, you don't have control. I don't have control over this horse. I don't have control over the struggles my husband is having. Like, I can't fix them. It's not up to me. Like, what I can control is where I am. I can control my mental state, you know, and I can control like the choices I make. But I really had to come to that realization that like I can't always fix things. I can't always get everybody to do what I think is right, which is, not necessarily always right anyway. So, um,
What do you think is the biggest like hindrance or obstacle for people resolving to let go of control?
the biggest hindrance, I mean, I think fear. I think we really fear the unknown. I feel like the reality is we don't have control. We can't control the different way our life unfolds. A lot of times, I think a lot of the philosophy in our culture is that you do have a lot of control, and to some extent, we our choices do influence things, and we do have influence over other people. We do have influence over our horses, but I think we fear the unknown, and we fear like what might happen. I'm definitely like I am really good at thinking of worst case scenarios with my kids, and thinking I can control everything. But the reality is, yeah, we just can't. And I think at some point we just have to realize that, if our fears come, we'll be able to face them, as terrifying as that might be.
Yeah, I can't agree more. Yeah, it's fascinating the way the horses have helped me uncover the areas in my entire being and existence that just they've illuminated my desire for control, where like you're saying, I actually
Yeah.
don't have control. It's a facade, but I do have control of what goes on internally. And then that is like, it's a co-creating space externally. So it's a fascinating.
Yeah, it is really
to me.
interesting. And, I think we do have internal control. I think that is still incredibly difficult. We can have that realization, but that doesn't make it easy. But I do think that that really is the only place that we have control. It's the only place we really can take full ownership of. Yeah, and it's interesting how the horses can kind of bring that to our attention.
Time and time again, it's like without fail, no matter what we're doing with
Yeah.
them. And I really appreciate and empathize and like your approach to the timing thing. What feelings come to mind when, because you had this new horse, this new Mustang that you were brand new to, and it sounds like you kind of had a bit of angst around the idea of timeline and how am I going to get this horse ready to go, whether that's just to take care of it and do the things that are
Right.
quote normal for horse ownership. What feelings come to mind as you kind of made that transition from a kind of a compressed timeline to more of like letting
Yeah,
it
I mean,
flow out?
honestly, it was another thing where the horses really taught me a lot about myself. And so like in school, I always did very well in school. I was very much the student that any teacher would probably dream of. Like, tell me to do anything and that I'll get an A and I'll go do it, I wouldn't question things. So here I saw all these people who were successful, in quotes, with Mustangs. And they were like very quickly getting these Mustangs to do amazing things. And, I couldn't even walk my Mustang out of the corral. And so for me, it really started off as kind of like a statement of my ability, like my worth, my, like maybe this wasn't meant for me and they just somehow are better at it. They can do better with it. And so even growing into like a place of shame, like it was embarrassing to be like, oh, you touched your Mustang after one day and, now you're riding it. And here I am still just like hanging out with mine, and we like I would go out with her a lot. And another thing, like for me, like life really got in the way of my work with her, but I didn't even factor that in. I still just kind of let it turn into statements about like, maybe you shouldn't be doing this, or maybe this is really you that's at fault here. But probably because I had had lots of pregnancies, like soon after I got her, I started having really, really bad back problems. And I got to the point,
Yeah, I can't imagine how life
yeah.
would get in the way with 6 young
Right?
children.
But I wasn't seeing that. That's the thing that's so, I don't think I'm the only one who does it, but I'm sitting here comparing myself to people who were like professional horse trainers or younger that didn't have like any other responsibilities. And because I can't keep up with them or I'm not in the same place with them with my horses, like I was letting that turn and become a statement about me. Um, But yeah, I mean, life got in the way. Like I had really bad back problems to the point where I couldn't even pick up my baby. I'd have to have my oldest daughter like bring it to me, and my back was like spasming. I thought I'm going to be crippled the rest of my life. It was so terrible. And it is really interesting. Just, I feel like every significant event in my life, like somehow the horses like play a part in it. Um, I finally, like I was having these problems, didn't have any idea what to do. They were like trying to get an MRI. I had back surgery when I was 20 years old for like some herniated discs. So I'm thinking like I've like ruined my back for my life. And I think it was probably just like all the changes your body makes when you're having kids and stuff. But I finally ended up going to a chiropractor, and they helped a lot, and they kind of got me to a point where it's like it was better, but it was still painful most of the time. And then, so I was like, this is as good as it's getting. I'm just going to live with it and keep living my life. And then one day I was out like messing with the horse corral, and I have these panels that attach, and I was just like kind of jerking them away from each other to get them to even out or whatever. And my whole back just like cracks all the way up. And ever since then, it's been great. Like it was just out of position. and but anyway, that totally put me off, this timeline that I was feeling like I had to have with my Mustang. But once I was able to let go of that and just be like, it doesn't really matter what everybody else is doing with their horses, and to just really more focus on like learning what I need to learn and like taking in the experience. It changed a lot. I remember one time when we were a little farther on, I had a friend who was going to bring his kids and his horses, and we were going to like go on a ride. And my Mustang had never been on a ride with other horses. And this is after I was like following Warwick and stuff, some more. And so I was like, okay, we're just going to see. Like, I don't know if I'm going to ride. I also had a really bad horse wreck in there at a point. So at this point I was like, I'm not pushing stuff. Like I just want to be safe. And so we went with my friend, and I like walked my Mustang the whole way. And I'm sure he just thought I was such an idiot, because he was definitely of the mind like, you ride it through, you tough it out, But I was more proud of myself to have gotten to the point where I could just let his judgment go and not worry about it, and just be like, I want this to be a good experience. So we rode like halfway with them while I walked. And my Mustang, she was just going nuts because she wanted to be with the other horses. But she, I could tell like she's not paying attention to me. Like if I get on her, I'm just, we're just going to see what's happened. Like I have no ability to like communicate with her right now. So anyway, we went partway with them, and then my daughter and I went off a different way and kind of like finished the ride, and it all ended up being fine in the end. But it was a big milestone just in that I was able to, like, I don't care what other people in the horse world think, they can think I'm wrong. That's fine.
That's fascinating. And you mentioned like at that moment on that particular walk, you had no way of communicating, or you wouldn't be able to. But what came up and resonated with me, like you were communicating that whole time, and even like listening to your own intuition, and even like what the horse is telling you, and not ignoring that. And I think so many times people just ignore what the horse is actually telling them, and they just don't
For sure.
they hear it or they feel it, and they just don't relate it to actual
Yeah, and I
communication.
think that's how that's how you're taught a lot of the time. That's how I was taught. It was not like, see how your horse is doing, make sure you can make a safe ride, make sure you guys are both comfortable and that you're communicating. It was like you get on, you ride it out, you don't let the horse get away with stuff, and so it becomes, in that scenario, it becomes a fight. And I mean, that's really the thing that changed my opinion is like, I don't think I can win fights against my Mustang. I'm like, I don't think I'm going to win if it comes down to that with she and I.
That makes sense. I hear that. So you mentioned or wrote in your bio how you have this vision of helping humans with horses, but the way that it's unfolding isn't quite how you have envisioned it. Can you elaborate more?
I mean,
on
kind
that?
of, I can. So I know you guys have a lot of people, and like Warwick has a lot of people who are just doing these amazing things with horses, and I guess, maybe I still have some of that because I kind of think like, I want to know, where my space is or whatever. And it's an interesting time in my life because up to this point, like my kids have needed me a lot. They've been young. It's like I'm feeding them, making sure they have food, and they're all kind of moving on in their life as adolescents and building their own life. And so it's kind of a big seasonal change for me or whatever to where, they're much more independent and my role with them is kind of diminishing, and it's opening up time and space for, what's next. And I've always wanted to do equine therapy. I remember when I was doing my master's program, like I would still say like, I want to do equine therapy. I have no idea how I would ever do that, but that was like the thing I wanted to do. And then I've had a few opportunities to just participate in it. I think between that and just my own personal experience, I absolutely know that there's a power that horses have to, whether you want to say heal us or, help us find out about ourselves, or even maybe just find peace in the world. Like I know that there's something there that you don't get in a lot of places that are meant to heal us or to make our lives better. And so I've always kind of felt like there's that power there. And to be honest, I don't know how that might unfold or how that might lay out. My family's always kind of been primary for me. And so my kids are more independent, but they also are very busy now. And so that takes up a lot of space. So I don't feel like I'm at a point where I can full-time put my efforts into like a physical facility, but I definitely still have this desire to just share what horses can do for us and how they can just help us in this world that I think like right now is very, very sick. Just people are so unhappy and so discontent with life, and it's hard. It's a hard emotional world, I feel like, to live in. We have a lot of, modern day comforts, but not always like the space and places to kind of return to ourselves from, I think, everything the world tells us we should be from the time, we're little kids entering school or whatever. So right now, that's what I'm really trying to figure out is kind of like what comes next and where this might go. And I guess I just feel like I know that I feel like I keep trying to kind of move away from the horses or just whatever. They'll just be my personal horses. But it's just one of those things that it just like keeps coming up. And as I just thought about like maybe the discussion we would have, just seeing the way that they have been a piece of my life. Somehow I just want other people to be able to share that and to just share how powerful horses are. And, obviously Mustangs hold a super special place in my heart. So yeah, not a very good answer yet, but that maybe something will happen in the future.
Oh, that's great. Do you ever feel like there is not enough room at the table? I fall into that trap a lot, even doing this podcast and, you know, um, feeling like all these like grand desires to really help reshape humanity in my, 1/8 billionth
Right.
sort
Yeah.
of way. um, do you ever
Yeah.
feel that
I mean,
way?
for sure I do. I think this is again like a personal issue that maybe the horses have brought to the forefront and just life experience. But I think it's really easy to feel inadequate or that people are always already doing it. There's not space for what you have to give or to just look and see that other people are, successful and doing really well. And, where do you fit in? And I think that's definitely a place I would say I'm navigating right now is just, where do I fit in once I'm not just a mom 90% of my time? And where is there space for me? And I don't know, I guess I don't know that I would say that space necessarily just opens up until we maybe take the steps towards it. Or maybe we're unable to see it. I don't know. But that's an interesting place where I
Oh,
feel
that's a
like
good
I'm
point.
definitely at, and um, yeah, I think it's easy to want someone, I don't know, maybe it's the way I grew up. I really like very clear, pictures. I would love a clear map in front of me of exactly what I'm supposed to do and how it's gonna unroll. And I think life doesn't happen that way. Like it happens, we take a step forward and then we kind of see where it goes and see what we need to do and what's going to work for us.
Oh, I hear that, and the horses have helped so much with that. I found we have 2 Mustangs currently, and with both of them and Dad's horse, the horse he was telling you about earlier, Cody, um, they have taught, I think, both of us collectively to drop our expectations. Because there's been so many times where I know I've walked in there and been like, we're going to do this. And Willow, my Mustang, she'll look at me and be like, no, we're not doing that. We're going to do this instead. Really? All right. That's cool. We can do that. I'm on Willow's time and then Grace's time and then Cody's time. And they've helped, I don't know, show that I don't have control over what life decides to throw at me, but I have control over how I
Yeah,
decide to deal with
100%. And
it.
for you to learn that at such a young age, like I feel like I think I know that now, but I'm still coming to acceptance with it. But I'm just like you.
Right? I'm 42 and I'm like, I turn to Alyssa and I'm like, I was a
I
complete
know.
idiot compared to you when I was
She's
17.
outgrowing all of us. Outlearning all of us. It'll be great to see where you
Jeez.
go.
Right.
But
For sure.
yeah, the expectations thing. And so, I have teenagers and they're getting into kind of an age where it's easy to have certain expectations for them. And I think it's been really helpful for me to step back and say, you know what, it's okay for things to unfold and come about differently than you think that they should come about. That was definitely with the horses, where I was like, just beating myself up because I couldn't be a 90-day Mustang trainer. Like it took me years instead. And, but I wouldn't trade that journey. If I had gotten an easier Mustang, I have a second Mustang, and he is a much easier Mustang. I could tell him to do anything. He is one where you could be the boss and he'll listen. He'll put up a little fight, but nothing serious. And if I would have gotten that for my first Mustang, there's so many lessons that I would have lost because it would have been so much easier. Like I could have had him, we could have made progress much faster doing things the traditional way. And I think I wouldn't have given it a second thought. But because my first Mustang was much more difficult, yes, it took a long time, but in that time, I gained all these lessons that the thing that I think is really amazing now apply to my life as like a parent or as a person. or just trying to see what goals and what might be next for me.
And that's fascinating. Dad's talked to me a lot about how the horses have helped him parent better. It's just, and I mean, that's one thing I don't understand. I don't have children. I have little siblings.
You'll find out if you do have children.
Adore, but I don't know. The horses are just, I don't know, they're so cool. And he says all the time, he's like, the horses are, I mean, they teach me how to be a better dad.
So what lessons do you think you've learned for parenting from the horses?
Oh, geez, I've learned so much. I'm like a completely different person than I was even half a decade ago, even a year ago. And I attribute that to the horses, but not that it's like a horse is my savior, so to speak. It's more so that I really believe like horses open up like portals of access to our inner self and our higher self. So I've learned just better communication. I've learned how to be more at peace and calm and less reactive. For me, trigger stacking has been a huge issue, coupled with, depression and anxiety. And then, so they've just really helped me in their own like unique way to get through that, which is interesting that you asked that, because you mentioned your had you have gotten another horse that was more like your gelding, I suppose, at first versus the mare that you got. And I'm actually in a program, I'm studying consciousness and human potential
cool.
right now. And that's kind of like the mystical side of saying like quantum physics and quantum mechanics and stuff. And like for me, when I saw a picture of Cody, which I would say he's quote my horse, I don't like to use that ownership. He's my best friend, but when I saw his picture, it was like kind of, it sounds like what you went through. It's like an unequivocal, you will come and pick me up, sort of thing. And that I think plays into all of these lessons that we learn. Dare I say that they know, or their spiritual path is somehow intertangled with ours to be our teacher in that way.
No, I definitely agree with that and have seen that in my life, where it feels like these horses were put there in a time where, and in a way that like I needed them to be. Obviously everyone doesn't have that. It's not horses for everybody, I think, but for me, they've been part of like some very huge turning points in my life, and they were a very pivotal part of that. And so it's hard to not believe that, maybe there's a divine power that's kind of looking out for you and saying, this is what you need, and I'm going to give it to you, even though in the moment, like, it was so frustrating to me sometimes that it wasn't the way I thought it should be. But it's hard looking back to deny, like, someone was kind of watching out and giving you what you needed in that time, and through the horses, and just the opportunity for you guys, for me to care for my horses and for them to care for me.
How many horses do you have currently?
So right now at my place, there are 5 horses. One is my oldest daughter's Arabian, that is kind of just getting boarded there. And then we have a little miniature horse. We got him after I got my mare, Silveny, just as kind of like a companion, because I didn't really think I was going to get 2 horses, which is funny to say now. And then we have my gelding. His name's Spirit. He's a Palomino. and he was trained through the Wild Horse Inmate Program, which is just, I don't even think they do it anymore, but I wish that they would use the Mustangs for that more, because I think it would just be so incredible for those people.
I thought it would be really cool if the inmate program, if they would incorporate, instead of kind of that natural horsemanship take and like getting them ready to go quickly, to incorporate like positive reinforcement, or even like some of like Lockie Phillips emotional horsemanship type stuff.
Yeah, communication. Yeah. And I think horses are a master at helping you to come to recognize your emotions, especially difficult horses. And I think a lot of people are in that situation because they didn't learn that emotional regulation. They didn't even maybe have the ability to identify their emotions, and instead just reacted, I think I see a lot of similarities with horses and humans in that way, where, like when a horse explodes or whatever, how humans do the exact same thing, where we know something's not right. We don't want to do it. We don't know how to deal with it. And so we just explode. And I feel like it's the same thing that horses are trying to tell us when they have those really strong reactions, like something's not right and we need to step back here and kind of figure this out. So yeah, I feel like there's so much potential to use the Mustangs, of which there's so many of, and they're around here, they're literally housed in the prisons. And I just wish that, so maybe that'll be in the future somewhere, but I wish that they could use that resource and, mutually help each other.
Yeah, because our prison systems are so broken and they're not rehabilitative. And shoot, I think a good number of people that are incarcerated for a long time actually come out and repeat because they don't know how to integrate into life. And it just seems to me like the horse program could be kinder, gentler, and perhaps like actually help to rehabilitate the humans and the horse at the same time.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of potential there. And even from the little bit that I saw of it, just them having the opportunity to be around horses. I remember when I picked up my mare, or when I went to look at her, the trainer who had been working with her, like she'd kind of got moved around between people just because of, who comes in and out in the program. So the guy who was kind of showing her around was not the one who had worked with her. And I was just talking to him for a little bit, and he was saying how he had been working with a horse and it had just colicked, and there's this, big, strong prison inmate just getting tears in his eyes because his horse hadn't made it, So it was easy to see that even just that time with horses was impacting them and allowing, them to feel again and to kind of develop a connection with something outside of themselves.
What is your favorite way to reinforce your horses?
I didn't answer your whole question. I just realized I forgot where we start. I have one more horse and then I'll answer that question. And she was supposed to be my oldest daughter's horse, and there's a whole other story behind her, but we're still working on training her. She's a little mare. But I would say, back to the reinforcing question, I think like allowing your horse to communicate with you, and a big thing with that is like letting them and recognizing when they say no, And I think that goes back to what we were talking about with expectations, like letting go of your expectations and instead, spending that time to learn, and not just to learn, but to just be there. Horses are really good at just being there, and I think humans aren't. We always have to have a goal. We always have to have a purpose. We always have to have a time limit. And so I think it can really change the relationship when you kind of let go of the expectations, Whereas instead of, we're going to get out on the trail today, or we're going to go to this horse show or whatever, that you can kind of just let go of that and kind of see what happens and what lessons there might be for you to learn in that.
Isn't that such a beautiful lesson that plays through to human relationships? I'm actually like, as we speak, that's really starting to unfold in my life even more profoundly than I ever have experienced it before.
Yeah, it's been a huge lesson for me as well. And I think failed expectations are some of the things that bring us so much heartache and stuff, because we think things should be different or they should be a different way instead of us just accepting. That's another huge lesson that I've learned with the horses and with just things that have happened in my life around that time, is just to accept that, it's okay. It's okay if things don't happen the way you want. It's okay if people aren't doing what you think they should do. It's okay if these obstacles come in your life. Like, instead of just like wishing them away, hating them, wishing, my horse was trained already. What are the lessons that we can learn from that? And just, there's really been so many life lessons for me, because a lot of the pressure I put on myself, even with training my horses, was because that was a place I connected with my mom. And so I kind of saw that as the same thing for my kids. And, some of my kids loved horses and some couldn't care less. So even that expectation was, even though it had really good intentions, I want to make these horses so that they can experience this thing that I've just felt so deeply. I want these horses, to be good, safe horses that, the people I love can ride and experience the same thing that I've experienced with them. Even that's unfolded differently, and me wanting it to unfold the way I thought it should come about is what created a lot of, negative feelings toward myself, I think I would say.
Absolutely beautiful. It really resonates with me. Do you like to read?
I love reading, yeah.
Do you have a particular book that comes to mind that you just would like to share?
Oh, man. Gosh, there's a lot. I would really have to think about that. I am reading one right now that I do really like because it kind of goes along with the expectations. It's called The Illusion of Money. And let me see it's by John. Let me get it up really quick. But in this book, he just talks a lot about, not John. I wasn't even close. Kyle Cease, The Illusion of Money. And it kind of goes along with what we were talking about. Just a lot of these expectations that life should be a different way. And he talks a lot about, it's a book about money, but technically I would say it's much more a book of how we view the world and what we view ourselves as worthy of, and kind of the value we place on money. Like, is money something that's giving us worth? Is it something that is giving us anxiety? And just kind of how to rethink that, and how to rethink how you think about yourself in terms of how money impacts you. So that's definitely a good one that kind of goes along the same lines of how I would say kind of our subconscious approach to the world really impacts us in so many different areas of our life, that once we can be a little more conscious of, we can use these things to serve us better and to kind of bring more positivity into our life versus, negative thinking and feeling disappointment or unworthy, or just hurting the way we think about ourselves because of the value we've placed on different things.
That's so interesting that you bring that up, and it's very synchronistic for me. I'm a prior certified financial planner and financial advisor, but my practice was very small, and I started it circa 2014, coming out of a divorce, and my entire financial situation was obliterated at that point. And so I was starting from ground zero, and then really took everything that I had, and we bought 10 acres of land and built a house, and that cost so much more money than I thought it was.
We've been there.
and and so there's a lot of like kind of shame and guilt and failure in that. And it's, I'll have to read that book. I haven't heard of it before. But for me, it was just like, there was a certain expectation and level and sort of like this facade that I felt like I needed to carry because of like a professional designation. And I had literally helped like hundreds of people over the course of my career, but it's like the painter's house is never painted, so to speak. And so yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up. It just kind of resonated with me.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of cultural expectations that really maybe don't always serve us as well as they could.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I mean, I get those lessons from the horse world too. There's a lot of expectations and rules, so to speak, of how things should or shouldn't be done. And there's not necessarily truth to them, I would say. I know, just kind of a funny thing, that a lot of people will say, like, the first ride you do on a horse, you should, like, walk, trot, canter on them. And with my horses, I haven't really done that. Like, I've really been focused on them being, like, safe horses for my kids to ride. So my mare, I've had her 7 years now. And years ago, I would have been so embarrassed to tell you this, but the first time I ever loped on her with intention was like 2 days ago. Because there were so many times when I was training her that she would bolt, and a few times I went off. And so, and between that and like wanting my kids to be able to ride her, like we just didn't focus on being able to lope or canter or whatever. So just, life can unfold differently and still be okay. Like, she's still been a great horse, even though a lot of people would be like, your horse is not trained at all because you cannot get her into a canter. But I can now, or at least I did once.
Well, that is so cool. I feel that partially with my mare, Willow. She's never had a saddle on. She's never had a bit in her mouth. And she's not a reactive horse. Like, she's more of a flight and shut down over fight. And, so she's really not reactive. We've had her for just over 2 years now. And I started riding her maybe just over a year ago. And I have yet to canter on her, but I've trotted on her, and she recently, she hasn't been wanting me to ride very much. It's this sort of like, before her, Dad and I would go on rides. We had another horse before Willow, and we would just, ride, but the horse never had a choice. And so it's cool to be able to listen to her and feel her. And it's like, we'll be riding and I'm like, you can canter. She's like, no, I don't want to. I don't know if I can. And so it's cool to like hear that from you.
Yeah.
And hear it's not just her.
Well, and I think, there's no rush. We feel like there's such a rush to everything in life, which is part, I think, just torture ourselves with it, feeling like we have to rush to everything. I think consistency is important. I think discipline's super important. But, I think a lot of times our timeline is not necessary. And
I totally agree, because in reality, time doesn't exist. I mean, if you go out into space and you're able to travel like at the speed of light or above that, time actually disappears. And so we live in this like expressive third dimension. And I think the horses, my hunch is, I don't have anything to back this up.
Hunches are great.
A fun sort. Yeah, it's a fun sort of hunch that the horses are kind of like multidimensional, and so they don't really see and feel time at all like the way we do in
I think for sure that time, like, I don't know that they do view time, beyond maybe when they're going to get fed. But I think, they live in a different world than us, which I think is probably part of what what is so magical about them is because they don't live in this rushed, hurried world with deadlines and clocks to measure every action that we take. And I was even just talking about that. So the day that I cantered on my horse for the first time, my daughter came up and she was riding our gelding or whatever, and I was kind of talking to my husband about the day, and he's like, you shouldn't put a time on your ride because you'll get out there and you won't want to like rush back. And it's so true. Like once I'm out on the horses, and like we live backed up to national forest, so we can kind of just go out into the mountains. And once you're out there, it's just different. Like you don't have the pressures. And I think maybe that's a big part of it. You don't have all the pressures that you feel. Like you can just be for a little bit. You can just sit there doing nothing that necessarily has a purpose behind it. No timeline to get anywhere unless you're putting that on yourself. And it really just, for me, it changes just my state of mind a lot. And like, it's a place that I don't ever want to leave. And I'm always like, oh shoot, look at the clock. Okay, I have to get back for whatever reason. But I think that's really true with horses, that time is different with them.
Oh, definitely. When you were saying that, the word meditation comes to mind, and it sounds like you're similar in the way that like we experience meditation with horses, and that doesn't necessarily mean sitting down and being silent, although we do that. But it also means, just being with them out in nature is meditative in and of itself. Do you have any particular like spiritual or even religious practice that you go through that you feel resonates with your horsemanship journey?
That's a really interesting question. So my spirituality has actually changed a lot, just recently. We used to be very like strict members of a religion, and just due to a series of events that changed for us. And so that's been I wouldn't say unsettled per se, but it's been maybe a learning point in my life right now. As we've kind of had that shift, I realized like I had a very strict relationship with the church we attended, but it's hard for me to say if I had like a relationship at all with like God or a higher being. And like I know there's times when I have felt God, the divine, like however you want to label it, just that there's something more in my life. So kind of stepping away from that has really caused me to reassess, what that is. And I feel like, for me, when I'm out in the mountains, whether that's by myself or with my horses, and not necessarily even the mountains, I would say just nature. I just happen to be close to the mountains. But, I think I feel the same thing. Like anytime you're like by a body of water and just quiet. I know you guys are kind of more deserty, right? But, so much the same out there. But when I'm in those places just away from humanity, I guess you would say, like those to me are sacred places. And so, yeah, in that way, it's something I've been trying to come to understand again. So kind of a weird place for me, but, I mentioned that last little horse that we have, she was supposed to be my daughter's horse, the one that has an Arabian now. And so I got her, it was like during COVID, and I told her like, we'll get you a Mustang to train or whatever. She's one of my girls that loves horses, and COVID hit. And so everything was shut down for like a year. And the first internet adoption that opened up, they were having some horses come out of Canon City. So it was like close enough that it was doable for us. So I got that horse for her. Anyway, kind of a long story short, like she ended up running away from home. And it's something I can laugh a little bit about because she's a little bit of a wild child, but it was devastating for me. Like I had just dedicated my life to my children, you know? And so it was just so devastating to me. And this horse's name is ironically, she named her Freedom. But it's been interesting to see the connections just between the reactions of horses and the reactions of children, and just how you can kind of learn from those two. Because I know for her, like she was just at a point where she felt like she needed freedom and she was ready to take on the responsibility for it. But so right before she like disappeared for a while, we had kind of like I'd got on her case, like you need to, like I have this horse, you need to be taking care of this horse. And she was working a ton. So she was working like 3 jobs, and we live pretty far away from town, and which we have only been here 2 years. So that was like a big life change for all my kids and for everybody, like a huge lifestyle change because it is very slower. You know, you don't just run to the store. Like you have to plan a day to go to the store out here. So it was a huge change for her. But so we had gotten like in this fight, and after that I had just hiked out into the mountains or whatever and just like felt this tremendous peace, which I just know was something divine, because you know it was that night that she like disappeared. And you know that was a whole big thing, and now she's doing great and we have like a good relationship and everything. But yeah, just being out there and feeling that peace was like a huge reminder to me that like it was going to be okay. You know, it would be okay. Like I could accept this. It's not, you know, I didn't raise my kid envisioning that they were going to run away from home. And especially after feeling like I'd done so much. But so yeah, it's been interesting how this other horse is really connected to that experience, and was kind of a learning opportunity for me there. And just seeing how, yeah, we kind of all have to live our own journey. I think with your kids, you kind of want to save them all the heartache you went through and like teach them the lessons so they don't have to go through it for themselves. But the more I think about it, it's like they have to have their journey too. And, you know, that's okay. And it's not just okay, it's good that they can have their own journey, that they can build their own life and find their own path.
I couldn't agree more as a dad. And just that's one thing to answer your question again about what the horses taught me about parenting is just that is that's actually a very big one, that my children are individuals just as I am. And yeah, so it's so great to, yeah, everything you said just really resonates, and getting out with nature and hanging out with the horses. And I was diagnosed with leukemia back in 2017, and that was a huge catalyst of just change for me. And then I've come to find that like I grew up, you know, pretty much fundamental Christian, and there's a lot of conditioning in that I actually believe now is quite unhealthy. A lot of
conditioning, yeah.
Yeah. And so as I've kind of awakened out of that, I've actually like, I kind of have this analogy of like, if you look at a mountain and there's a single peak and there's millions, there's like infinite number of ways to approach that peak. And I think that's what like the religions and the spiritual practices on this earth are. And it's ultimately just getting to that peak of love and ultimate like consciousness and love and what we actually are. And the religions will break it down and call it God or divine. I know that raises some or ruffles some feathers for some people, but the horses to me have just been a bridge to that. And it sounds like, you know, you've experienced that as well. It's like really great. So thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I would agree with that for sure, that they kind of bridge that gap between kind of the modern, busy, man-made world and the natural world. And
yeah, it's like the third and fifth dimensions, you know, they kind of just
Yeah.
Bridge to that.
Yeah. It's interesting. I don't have all the answers for that or pretend to, but I agree with you that any religious practice or organization has, like, there's good in it and there's also not good in it. And ultimately, there's just so many good people out there trying to do their best and overcome their challenges. And so I guess for myself, it's hard to tell anyone else what your focus should be, or to compare myself, or to say that there's a certain path you should walk, which isn't always what I would have said. There are, before I would have said, no, this is the way you need to go. And like, especially, for my kids, I probably would have had a very specific journey that I thought they should take. I have control issues, if you can't tell, that I'm working on.
Don't we all?
Or had them. I would say I still have them. I just am better. So yeah, I think that the thing I know for sure is, man, when you're out there in nature, whether it's with your horse, and again, I think for some people it can be something different, sailing or dogs or whatever. But yeah, there's just something about being away from the world and being out in the natural world and being with the animals and the other creations like that really just, I don't know, for me, it just changes something inside me.
Couldn't agree more. How can people find you? Or
so all my stuff is called The Touch of a Mustang, which really just goes back to how, like, my Mustang, like, just having that time with her, like, I would say kind of saved my sanity. I would say, as there was a lot of turmoil in the other parts of my life. And yeah, so I have Instagram and Facebook, and I'm kind of working on a website. For a while, I was doing some articles and things about people who have really just had Mustangs in their life that made a huge impact on them. So I'm kind of thinking about getting back to some of that. I have a website that's kind of in process, so I'm working on getting that back up and going and seeing where that might go. But yeah, The Touch of a Mustang on Facebook and Instagram.
Very, very cool. And we'll post links out for everybody so that they can grab it from the show notes page and keep in touch and all that good stuff. So yeah, thank you so much for joining us for this talk today. And
well, thanks for having me.